Hi everyone, it's Miss Smith again, and today we are going to be reading a story called Nature's Patchwork Quilt. Now, this story here is going to go over how animals and plants, how they all depend on each other and how they all interact in the story to kind of make some kind of quilt, okay? Now, if you don't know what a quilt is, I do have an example right here. So basically a quilt is just a blanket that is made up of many different designs. So here we can see that this blanket right here has a whole bunch of designs all here. Trying to show you a good visual. So again, a quilt, we can see all these designs and they're all stitched together to make a blanket. Now the story today is going to be just like that quilt, but with animals and plants. It's going to explain how plants and animals, when they're put together, it makes a somewhat of a patchwork quilt. Okay, so we're going to be reading about that today. All right, so the patchwork quilt. Look into nature and you will see a patchwork of beauty and mystery. So again, we see all these plants and animals and bugs and everything in here. We're going to see how a patchwork of it makes a beautiful blanket. A patchwork quilt has many pieces that fit together to make a beautiful blanket. So just like the one we just looked at. Nature is like a patchwork quilt. It has many different habitats all pieced together to create our wonderful planet, which is Earth. Okay? So all these different habitats all throughout the world, when we put them all together, it makes a beautiful place that we call Earth. Okay? Any habitats such as a forest, animals, and plants live together. They are food for each other and help the forest grow and develop. Each plant or animal depends on each other. Like a quilt stitched together, we call this interdependence. So again, when plants and animals depend on each other or they rely, okay, that's called interdependence, okay? A desert is another habitat with plants and animals that can live in a hot and dry climate. So let's think of some animals that you might see in a desert or a hot and dry climate. Here we see a lizard. We also see some kind of bird, maybe like a sparrow. We see a jackrabbit. It looks like we see some cactus here and a mouse. So do you think about what animals you might see in a dry desert? In a quilt, each piece has its own unique place in the design. In a habitat, each animal and plant has a special role called its niche. Okay, so each animal and plant have a special role. We're going to learn about what that special role is. A prairie is a grassland habitat. Some prairies have prairie dogs that eat roots and plants. Snakes eat the prairie dogs. Hawks eat the snakes. So you want to think about what does the prairie dog eat, and then who eats the prairie dog, and what eats the snake, okay? This is called the food chain. The prairie plants are the first link. Prairie dogs are the second. Snakes are the third. And hawks at the top of the food chain are the fourth link. So kind of think of it like a triangle. Okay, there's 4 different segments in a triangle. At the very top of the triangle, we have the hawk. The hawk is at the top of the food chain. And we know that the hawk eats the snake right here. And then we can see that snake eyeing that prairie dog because we know that the snake eats the prairie dog. And prairie dogs usually eat grass or other kinds of vegetation. So again, you can kind of see what the food chain is made out of. The ocean, which has 97% of all the water on Earth, has many different habitats. Ocean water near the surface contains very tiny plants called phytoplankton. So it's tiny, tiny little plants that you can't really see. Tiny animals called zooplankton eat phytoplankton. So the really tiny little animals, they eat the phytoplankton, okay? The tiny little plants. Tiny shrimp called krill eat zooplankton. So little fish like krill, they eat the tiny little zooplankton that you can't really see. Now we have little fish eat sardine. Little fish called sardines eat krill or the shrimp. Okay, so that's going to be your basic fish eating the shrimp. Okay, salmon eat sardines. So salmon is a little bit bigger of a fish. Sharks or seals eat the salmon. This is one marine food chain. Again, marine means underwater. Okay, so there's a lot of different kinds of food chains all throughout the earth. Okay, and all these different habitats. Pretty neat. The seashore at the edge of the ocean also has many habitats. Different plants and animals live in the shallow water, on the rocks, and in the sand. Over generations, plants and animals often change in ways that help them survive. For instance, the feet of swimming birds changed to have webbing, which helps them swim better than their ancestors did. So webbing is just the duck's feet, okay? It got bigger over time. Some fish can change colors to help them hide or camouflage themselves. Such changes are called adaptations. Now, these adaptations are changes that have been made over time. They happen because it helps the animals survive in their new habitat. Okay, so these changes or adaptations allow them to survive. Okay, lakes and ponds have many tiny plants and animals living in them. They are very small, but you can see them with a magnifying glass or a special tool called a microscope. So there's a lot of tiny little microorganisms in the pond that you can't really see with just your plain eye. You have to use a special tool that allows you to look closer. Okay, so these are super, super small. These microscopic plants and animals are food for each other. The way that these plants and animals eat and are eaten is so complicated that we call it the food web. Okay, so that's another thing that we talk about, the food web. Arctic and high mountain habitats are very cold much of the year. It's a tough place to live. To survive harsh climates, plants either stay alive all winter under snow or make seeds that can survive in the cold. So here we see a picture, looks like of some reindeer. We see a polar bear. Okay, so all these Arctic animals that live in cold habitats. Animals store up food to survive burrows or hibernate in caves. Birds fly to warmer places. Ways of adjusting to the climate are called survival mechanisms. So again, think of which animal hibernates during winter, okay? That animal, the bear, they hibernate so they can survive during harsh, cold winters, okay? And we heard that the birds, they fly down south to warmer areas so that they can survive, okay? Rainforest habitats are very wet. Cool rainforests are temperate, such as in North America and New Zealand. Hot rainforests are tropical, such as in South America, Africa, and Southern Asia. Many rainforest trees are large. Many are cut down. This is called deforestation. Fewer places are left for plants and animals that can only survive in the rainforests. When you think about what might happen to those animals if their forests and their homes are cut down, what might happen to them, okay? Rainforests have lots and lots and lots of different kinds of trees, shrubs, mosses, lichens, fungi, insects, reptiles, amphibians, birds, and mammals. Many different species together make up biodiversity, okay? So these habitats or these rainforests, they have a lot of biodiversity, which is a lot of different kinds of species of animals. Okay, we learned that there's all these different kinds of plants, trees, birds, amphibians, mammals, all these different animals living in the same habitat. Okay, and they all depend on each other in a specific way. Houses, towns, and cities are habitats for people like us. People built them over what once was a prairie, desert, forest, or rainforest. People have changed some plants and animals by working with them over generations. Dogs, cats, and farm animals, as well as many plants that produce food, are very different from their wild ancestors. When plants and animals are changed by people, we call it domestication. So like dogs and cats, they weren't always domesticated, which means they weren't always changed by people, okay? There are older versions where they would be more wild, okay? So it changes over time. Ranches and farms are also habitats made by people on what was once prairie, forest, or desert. Often domesticated animals like cows, horses, pigs, and chickens live there. Domesticated plants like tomatoes, corn, and wheat also grow there. So again, domesticated means that they were changed by us humans, okay? So that means we have a horse here, we see some sheep. What else do we see? We see some cows here. Even some plants have been domesticated, such as corn, cabbage, or some kind of lettuce. Again, these were all changed by humans or domesticated, okay? All right. More and more natural habitats are being taken over by human habitats. When a natural habitat is gone and plants or animals don't have any place to live, they die. When the last plant or animal of the species dies, the species is extinct. That just means it's no longer there. There's no more of them left, okay? So if we look back a few pages where it said rainforests are being cut down, this is called deforestation. Now we can explain that when this happens, animals that depend on these trees and forests, they probably die too, or they have to find a new place to live. Okay, so that's why us humans are kind of ruining these habitats. Because plants and animals can't speak for themselves, many environmentalists have worked hard to save them by preserving their habitats. They clean up rivers, plant trees, help animals, study science, paint pictures, sing songs, and write books. Give speeches, make movies, persuade policymakers, give money, organize friends, and much more. Okay, so all these people who try and save the environment, try and save animals and plants, we call these environmentalists. Okay, they're trying to preserve or save what's left of the habitats. When you are in nature, look around at its beauty. Consider how all the plants and animals live together in an interdependent web of life. This patchwork quilt of nature covers the whole earth, your home. It is yours to learn about, to enjoy, to care for, and to love. So here we see all the patchwork habitats here, and when they're all stitched together, it makes our beautiful planet Earth. Okay, so that's why it's important. We need to preserve it and save it as we can. All right. So this is just a nice little story. I'm learning about all the different habitats on Earth, all different animals and plants, and how they all interdepend on each other. Okay, so when you go outside, try and think of what animals or plants might be around you. Okay, until next time, bye.